I'd have to say that my exposure to it as a child was that these were the kids that they called special need. And they wouldn't let us go out and interact with these kids. They couldn't play ball with us. They couldn't play football with us. They were considered strange, and that we needed to be away from them. So it didn't affect us well. I didn't understand that. That was in the 60s. During the 60s, right before Vietnam. Well, you know, as the years went by and I was exposed to special need problems, I found out my brother was very, very much special need. He went to a special class. He wasn't even in proper high school until almost sophomore year. Then he was brought back into high school. I didn't understand why. Why did they separate my brother from school? I felt he wasn't very smart and very bright, but they didn't have a reason to remove him from me, from the family. At least I didn't think so. So the years went on, and I can't recall anything special, outstanding, except my brother, he didn't drive, and he didn't do a lot of things that the other kids his age were getting into. He played with smaller kids, like he was in 15, 16, he's still playing with 8, 9-year-old kids. And that was the level of his communication. And threw a lot of tantrums. Tantrums that I learned later on in life were a very big part of a child being autistic. Well, eventually he did get a job and became a park supervisor for Orange County and did very well for many, many, many years. Very procedural, kind of follow the rules a certain way. You don't bend the rules. And that's basically why he got out of it, because he found that the county didn't follow the rules they made. And he was upset. They were kind of railroading him. They were kind of making him look like the fall guy. When all he wanted to do is to follow what the park rules were. And I understand that. Well, when I got married and we roll up to go a few years ahead and my children grow up and my daughter ends up having children, which is where in my stories I have told you, I have 6 grandchildren that I watch all the time with my wife. Our pleasure, huh? It was nice of God to do that to me. You know, sometimes we wonder why we're given certain things, and every day I ask that question. It's like, why? Why, God? Isn't there some other thing we could do to be good for these kids? Well, there's not. Well, you know what? I think autisticness is a very serious thing in life. I really do. Hold on a second. Hold on, let me see something. Where's my phone? Yeah, my phone. Okay. But back to autisticness. Well, you know what the internet says about this? I jotted this down so I can tell you what the internet said about it. All right. Let's see. Where is it? Right here. Come on. It did again. And I cannot get those windows to get large again. It won't do it for me. There we go. It finally did it. And I'm getting all kinds of stuff off my computer. All right. Well, I found that it says autism, the spectrum of autism. that autism stands for Autism Spectrum Disorder, ASD, and also Autism Spectrum Condition, ASC, which is a neurodevelopmental disorder and characterized by deficit or social communication, social interaction, and repetitive, which can include hyperactivity to the sensory inputs. Autism is a spectrum of disorders. I think you get an idea of it without reading anymore. The main thing I want to do is ask the question about autism. Autism. I can't tell you if any of you have had it or not of a child. I do know that there's a lot of stories that I can tell you about the episodes we've had with our grandson that we've had for quite a few years. Has been autistic all his life, and he's 16 now. Yeah, I think he turned 16. And we have another one that's turning 9. Yeah, 9. So we have 2 basic autistic children. And the thing is with autistic children, they simulate, they interact like if one that's 16, you would swear by a lot of his body language and stuff like that he's a lot like the 8 years old. And when our oldest was younger, the younger one that is paralleling him, he was doing the same thing. It's like they were both in sync, which I'm trying to say is most autistic children, if you look at them closely, you will notice that they respond more in a younger group of age. So if you treat them like that, they're like a younger child with a lot more passiveness, calmness, not getting upsetness, that you can get a lot further with them, and you can learn to live with them, because the autistic children, like our older one, he has changed over the years. Medication has been different. We've had trouble with his weight. We have trouble with a lot of things. They think his liver has a problem because of his weight. He is like a child at his age, but very, very, very sharp, very intellectually quick to learn new data. He may have trouble socializing. He may have trouble talking with people, but he's getting better. Kind of like my brother, as he got better, and he worked finally with the county and he was a caregiver. I could see our older becoming like that. Now, the question is how do we deal with it as human beings when we have friends that look at us and say, why is your child so weird? Why isn't your child into sports like your other children? Is there something wrong with them? And you want to not tell anybody there's something wrong with them. You want to tell everybody that everything is perfect. As parents, that's what we want. But we can't. And I don't think God expects us to act that way. He expects us to stand up for the child and tell them how God loves all of us, no matter if they're like your child or like another child that may not have autism. It's a hard thing to do. I know when we were first interacting, my wife was an amazing person. We had changed from one school to another and got a psychiatrist, or got a new psychiatrist down at Escondido. I'm not going to tell you who it was. I think that person should be fired, should not be doing the business. Well, she came in, assessed Kenny. This is like 3rd grade. Now he's in 10th grade. Assessed Kenny, and he was having flares like imaginary, like he would have imaginary friends living and talking to him, kind of like the story of Harry, imaginary rabbit. That's what Kenny was like. And because of that, this psychiatrist wanted to have Kenny put in an institute and be analyzed, and faked me to sign some paperwork, which I did. But my wife found out about it, and I contacted the agency, and I got very upset because I got a phone call about having him transported, and I never said any such thing. So you have to be careful when you're talking to doctors, whether they're really on your side or they're on the side of themselves. Well, we got past that stage, and later on, we were talking to another person to get an MRI, and they wanted to know how my wife was able to deal with it when Kenny would disappear into that world. It was like, oh. And she said she'd sit down next to him and she started talking to him. And he would say he could hear her. And then eventually she would get him to think that she was in there with him and that he could see her and he could see that where she was standing. And they got a hold and they held hands. And she walked him out of that cloud of imagination. I wonder how many of those special kids have that. Have you ever stopped and daydreamed? Have you ever driven a car and be thinking about something and all of a sudden you run into a wall or another car because you never saw it because you were thinking of something else? What makes that any different than having an imagination that takes you into another world to escape the horrors of your current life? I think children try to escape sometimes things they can't cope with, whether it's doing homework, whether it's doing stuff for parents or religion or something they saw on television or a best friend. I mean, my granddaughter's going through the fact of they wanting to say that could be a bad person, but she's just mad. She vocalizes a lot. She's upset because her best friend is now somebody else's best friend, and she's upset. This happens to us, not just a special need, but all kids have problems. Running into the girls' bathroom, little boys that don't know any different because they're still learning. All of these kids are good. And when they are having a special need problem or they're learning when they're little, that is the most important time. Like I said, Pathfinders and Adventures should be addressing to the special need. I know that private schools should be addressing it. As a substitute teacher for the Seventh-day Adventist Conference, I came across a lot of different classes that had special need or autistic type children in them, but they weren't being treated any different. They weren't given that special need touch that you have to when you're dealing with special need kids. Well, all I have to say is our older is getting better, and it's times daily Holocaust. I mean, Holocaust, or whatever you want to call it, the whole world falling apart happens here at the house every day. So what do we do about it? We teach the children the best we can that they need to be understandable, which is hard because children don't understand when another child comes along. And autistic children have a tendency to use physical confrontations. They may hit each other. They may, go ballistic and bump into you. And if they're heavy, that can be bad. It's like they short circuit in a way. And they go berserk. Like almost another thing I once like to say, I had a girlfriend before I met my wife. And she had, I can't think of it, but she'd have these seizures in her and she would start jumping over the place out of control, almost like an autistic child when they go into frustration and they get angry and they don't see anything but the rat like a bull. And it's hard to talk to them. It's hard to bring them down. I would have to say that since I have been doing Mr. D's stuff, I have tried some different features on my grandson. For one thing is, this is good for all children. When you wake them up, you make sure that you talk softly. You make sure that you talk about maybe God, how much God loves them, and to make them smile at the beauty of the new world. And you know what? It does make a difference. The autistic children feel it inside, just like all children feel that love of God if it's given to them first thing in the morning, like an adrenaline shot. It's very important to everybody, even us adults, to remember when we open our eyes, we say thank you. Kind of takes me back to my heart attack. My heart attack when I told God, to God, here I go. And I'm either going to show up on your doorstep or I'll open my eyes and I know you have work for me. Well, you know what? I closed my eyes. And when I opened my eyes, I said, hallelujah. I knew that I had a job to do. And as Mr. D and a representative to bring God to young people and to my grandchildren, and my children who don't really follow what I hope they would as they learned about God. We try to be the witness we can be. So if you have autistic, special need, any kind of communicational problem children, remember, they are still God's children. It's still our job to be witnesses to them of God and the power that He has and the love He has for them. My grandchildren in the car, if we don't know these VBS songs by now, you're insane. But they listen to the last year's, Awesome God, VBS every single day, 2 or 3 times. The olders want to burn the CD. The youngers, they just keep asking for it over and over. And we switched to another year now, VBS. The kids like that stuff. And it brings God's goodness in them out where us parents want to see that wonderful out, not the hardness of this world. And this hardness of the world on autistic children is not good because they are a product of their environment also, besides what may have happened in their birth. And whatever they interact with around them has effect on them, like a sponge, like a small child that hasn't grown up yet, that's still consuming its environment to tell it what it's going to do in this world. I feel, as representatives of God to our youth, that we need to remember that. We need to open our hearts to our children and always be there for them, no matter if it's good or if it's bad. I'd like to, at this time, stop with this autistic. I may have another follow-up, but right now I'd like to say, I hope it helps. And Mr. D wants to say goodbye. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, okay? God bless you. Amen.